December 15th, 2019. Joe here at Simple Life Show. I appreciate everybody for joining me today. Don't forget to like, subscribe, share, do all the good social media stuff to keep the rational voices in front where they belong. So this month is really going really fast and slow at the same time. Of course, we've been talking about impeachment a lot, and I think this is all really part of the plan with the liberal complex out there, that they want to keep this impeachment kind of fiasco and the circus alive and well in the public sphere, and also in the minds of the voters out there going into the next election cycle. So, we're not going to be really so much talking about impeachment so much, because most people, at least the majority of the people out there who do have a rationality about them, really stopped watching this whole thing probably a week ago. It's just it wasn't any character witness. There was more or less all character witnesses instead of actually evidentiary witnesses. There was no one that really had anything that could implicate the president in any kind of crime. Of course, what he did was probably not the best thing to do, but it wasn't impeachable. No, it wasn't. But we all know that Trump really is not the conventional president that some people really kind of wanted, at least not the one that we voted for with Obama. So Obama, if we want to talk about impeachable offenses, Obama has really done a lot of them as well, including a lot of drone strikes that killed American citizens without any due process. We do have the Benghazi trials. We have Fast and Furious. We could even bring up the healthcare scandal, if you want to call it that, because that was really unconstitutional for a lot of the people being forced to pay for something they didn't want. But we do see a lot of this, and this kind of plays into this whole coup thing. Of course, Trump has been taking to Twitter as of late. We'll just say for the last 3 years, because this really started the day that he won the election. And there's plenty of articles out there that we'll start looking at, and we'll also describe why this is a coup, and it has nothing to do with impeachment. And I think it will make a lot more sense when I start getting into this. So it'll be probably a little bit longer video. I'll try to keep it a little bit, I'll try not to keep it too long. But as I predicted over the past few weeks, there are at least a handful, if not a dozen, senators and congresspeople that are going to be not voting for this impeachment articles from the Democratic side. So this is not only just a partisan witch hunt, which I believe, it is actually worse than that, because there's defectors coming from the offensive side. And this is really going to be something that's not going to bode too well for the Democrats. Plus, I really think this whole thing is just to add the moniker of impeached to the president's title, because every time that someone, especially in the election cycle, over the next year, when they refer to Trump, they're going to be referring to him as the impeached president. And yes, he is the impeached president, but he's also still the president. And I think we really need to get over it. But I think this is just part of the metagame that the liberals are playing in Congress, because they know they will not be able to get rid of him. But if they can in some way subvert his influence over his base, which I really don't think they have a chance of doing, because all this has really done is mount up more support for the president. In fact, the recent polls show that the majority of Americans are now against impeachment. What they really don't tell you is that the vast majority of Americans are either for impeachment or without removal, which means that, we'll condemn him for his actions, I guess, and we'll give them the benefit of the doubt that, hey, what he did was probably inappropriate, but it's not impeachable. But there is a lot of bias when it comes to this whole thing of who supports this and who's not, because there's technically three questions. Do you not support impeachment? Do you support impeachment with removal? And do you support impeachment without removal? So the vast majority, probably 3/4 of Americans, either don't support it or support impeachment without removal. So the whole support impeachment with removal is a very, very small minority of people out there, and they're usually the lunatics who go out there and that support Antifa and all this other kind of stuff. If you do support impeachment with removal, please let me know why, because the articles don't include any crimes in there. They have been talking about bribery. They have been talking about quid pro quo. They have been talking about treason and all these other types of things that are not included in these articles because they just simply didn't have enough evidence. So if you agree that the president should be removed for those crimes, please, for the love of God, bring forward the evidence that you have. Make sure it's not heard through the grapevine. Make sure it's not a supposition or an assumption or something like that, because that's really all we've seen. That's why people have fallen asleep and they're not watching this anymore. And that's really why a lot of people are going along the lines of, hey, maybe this is a coup. Maybe it's not the technical definition of coup d'etat, where you have, a forced removal of a political opponent. But some are saying that, of course, that's exactly what Trump was trying to do. Of course, he's, Biden doesn't actually have any power. He's not in office. He's just running. But some are trying to say that he was trying to remove him as a political enemy. Well, some can think that, but Trump was talking about this before Biden actually got into the race. This was an issue with the corruption in Ukraine, and Trump was already talking about this before anybody knew about Biden and all this other stuff that was going on. So the fact that Biden was really, the fact that Biden happened to be, entering the race at that time is inconsequential to me. Because if there was actually, actual corruption going on, and if he was trying to get to the bottom of it and he was withholding aid and all that stuff, then so be it. That's what presidents do a lot. That's what Obama did. Obama worked hand in hand with the Russians for 8 years. He looked past a lot of other stuff as well. He looked past a lot of the annexations of Crimea as well, the invasion of Georgia. He walked hand in hand with Putin. He made sure that he was able to do certain things for the Kremlin. But a lot of liberals just don't understand that, or they don't remember. They have selective outrage and obviously selective memory because they don't remember all these things that Obama did. But this is really going to be about more or less along the lines of what is a coup, not so much what is a coup, but why this is a coup. And why it has nothing to do with his impeachment. But first, we're going to get into, there's obviously a lot of defectors from the Democratic Party. And some are actually defecting parties. Some are saying they're not going to be voting for this impeachment. But this is a interview that just recently happened on Fox and Friends. We'll listen to that, and we'll move forward.
I've known for some time that the President of the United States had been in violation. I could count any number of reasons why I think he should have been impeached.
The party is now much more unified, that this is less an argument over whether this is something we should do or not.
I know it's time. It's been time. We must impeach this lawless president.
House Democrats still pushing to impeach President Trump, but turns out not all of them feel this way, including our next guest, who predicts it's not going to end well for his party.
Here to explain is Democratic Congressman Jeff Van Drew, member of the Problem Solvers Caucus and the Blue Dog Coalition, which is more moderate. Good morning, Congressman.
Good morning. It's great to be with all of you.
Good to have you here. So we want to hear you out on this, because when the president tried to brand the Democratic Party as the party of AOC and the squad, there were a lot of leaders in your party saying, that's not true, he's exaggerating. And now we see Nancy Pelosi appearing to cave to the squad and others. Is that one of your fears, that the left wing of your party's taken over?
Well, my biggest fear is that we don't maintain the big tent, which means that everybody is welcome. So in my case, I am a moderate Democrat. I am part of the Problem Solvers Caucus, as you mentioned, which is bicameral and bipartisan, which means that we get senators and congresspeople, Republicans and Democrats, and we work together to try to solve problems. I'm a different kind of Democrat, and I always have been. I have always believed in bipartisanship. I have always, in my history in the state Senate and the Assembly, as a mayor, whatever.
So, but Congressman, on that point, are you
always
worried?
Worked with other. Let me just finish 1 second. Always worked with other folks to make sure that together we can get things done.
But are you worried because you were elected, as you know, in 2018 on jobs and health care and all these other issues? It doesn't sound like your party's addressing that.
Well, I think we should address it more, and I think all that's swirling around us now is impeachment. We talk about it day and night. It's what's on the news, and frankly, I think it's fine if they still want to continue to have the type of investigations they did to see if something new turns up. There is nothing that has turned up that truly is impeachable. We all must remember that impeachment was something that our founding fathers set to be rare, extremely rare. And I always use the example, even of President Clinton, and I didn't believe in his impeachment either. But when they did go through a process with him, he actually got to the point where he lost his law license. But you will notice that he still wasn't removed from office, as serious as that was.
Congressman, we don't have much time. I just want to ask you, are you concerned about the potential implications of this on the House elections and on the presidential election in 2020?
Well, sure. I mean, you have to be concerned about that, and you'd also have to be concerned, which is most important, getting good stuff done. Health care, veterans' concerns, Social Security, Medicare, the debt, the deficit, a whole host of them. We could go on and on and on. Infrastructure, that's what we should do. Now, if something else turns up that we haven't seen that is extraordinary, then that's a different story. But right at this point, we need to get good stuff done. Let the people impeach. Let the people vote. If they want to vote them out, we're going to have an election.
That's something
shortly.
Nancy Pelosi said a short time ago, and she's changed. Congressman Jeff Van Drew is sticking with that.
So I think that really just kind of breaks it all down that, Democrats are really, at least some moderate Democrats, those who have at least an inkling of rationality left in them, can see that the entire party is being invaded by something different. Because I used to be a Democrat. I used to be a diehard Democrat when it was truly liberalism. And when liberals, the whole title of liberalism was actually, before it was taken over by the progressive left agenda. And I think a lot of these people are starting to wake up slowly to a lot of this. My main fear is that they're not waking up quickly enough to a lot of this. I'm not saying that conservatives are the answer either, because there's a lot of war hawks out there that simply want to have endless wars as well. And I'm not for that either. I am for actual true progression forward, but also maintaining the foundation of a constitutional republic, maintaining the idea that we are all unique and we all have the equality under the law and equality in the eyes of our own Creator, who really is the basis behind this conception of what we call America. Not so much the history of America, because we all know that every country has had its blights, but what I am referring to is actually the foundation, the idea behind freedom and the American freedom from which it stands. And sorry for those pops-ups. I do this live, so that's just something you have to put up with. So moving forward here, I had the chance to actually do two separate searches. I was able to save one. I didn't have enough room for the other, or I accidentally closed it out. But ever since November 9th, 2016, which was the day before Trump was elected, all the way to January 20th, 2017, when he was actually inaugurated as president, there was just endless articles about Trump being impeached. What can we do to impeach Trump? Okay, it just goes on and on and on and on. And this was simply just for November 9th, 2016 to January 20th. Of course, ever since then, there has just been nothing but impeach Trump 24/7. That's all the mass media has actually played out to. They are brainwashing the media. They're brainwashing the public into believing that Trump is like this really bad boogeyman that's out to get them. And I'll even concede. Now, when I searched for Obama, and you can do this yourself if you want, using the same dates, of course, for 2008 to January 20, 2009. There was hardly really anything. Now, if I did his entire time when he was president, from 2008 to 2016, yes, or actually January 19th, 2017, you'll still find plenty of people who wanted to impeach Obama. But that wasn't just because they hated Obama; it's because Obama was doing a lot of unconstitutional stuff. Now, you could make arguments that pretty much every president has done stuff that has kind of subverted the Constitution and stuff like that. And yes, if they do that, then they need to be slapped back in place, and they need to be correct and say, no, you cannot do that. But that is why we have three separate branches of government, to serve that purpose. But every time that the president has a goof up and does something that might be construed as unconstitutional, that is what the court's for. That's what the Constitution. That's really what the judicial court's for, because in the Supreme Court, because that's their job to determine whether something is constitutional or unconstitutional. That's what they do all day. That's what they spent their entire legal careers getting ready for that opportunity to serve on the Supreme Court. And that's why we have those separate powers. But the impeachment, just like Jeff from New Jersey was talking about, this is reserved for the most heinous type of situation. I'm not talking about like murder or something. Now, if that happened, obviously that would qualify. But I'm talking about stuff that really deserves for a president to be removed. And a lot of these moderate Democrats are saying, you know what, this is really not going to bode either well for me politically, but also on a rational point of view, that this really doesn't deserve to be impeached for. President to be impeached for. It just doesn't make any logical sense. So feel free to play around with that. Find as many articles. They are out there. So back in November 15th, we know how really boring the impeachment has been. So a lot of the liberals in the mass media who are trying to push this kind of black propaganda against the president, it's really they're really starting to get irritated about this. Jennifer Weiner from the New York Times, November 15, 2019, says, "I'm sorry, is impeachment not entertaining enough for you?" She is really upset that people are tuning out from this. They're just not watching because there's not any evidence there. There hasn't been any evidence. That's why there's no actual crimes in the articles of impeachment. There's just an abuse of power, which is kind of vague. You can also, and then there's a second one, which is obstruction of Congress, which is still kind of vague as well. So we have two vague articles of impeachment, which I predict that we'll have at least 10 to 20 Democrats vote no on, which is going to look horrible for them if they actually are able to get up to those numbers. We also know that the majority of voters, like I told you before, and this was from a couple days ago, 5 days ago, the majority of voters don't want the president impeached and removed. Just like I was telling you, these polls that are put out are all part of this black propaganda. You could put out a poll that says the majority of voters want Trump impeached. Okay, that may be true, but within that sect of people, you will also have a lot of people, probably half or more of those people say, yeah, he should be impeached but not removed, because this really just doesn't go to on the grounds, even enough to get to the Senate, obviously, that the acts were egregious enough to actually being removed from the role of president. We need to let Trump do his job. I know a lot of people out there might not like this guy. I really didn't like him at first either. I was a Rand Paul guy. I've always been a Ron and Rand Paul guy because I consider myself a libertarian before I ever consider myself a conservative. But I have to go based on, I have to support the people that are closer to what I truly believe, and Trump fit the bill, and it was unfortunate Rand Paul didn't get in, because I believe that Rand Paul is so squeaky clean it's not even funny, and he supports a lot of the constitutional republic type of stuff that I'm really passionate about. And, but Trump comes really close. I like the guy. Sometimes he's not my cup of tea, but he's really getting things done, and you can't argue with that. But the majority of voters don't want him impeached and removed. Okay, that is a vast majority of people that don't want that. I say vast majority, but it's 51% registered voters surveyed that they didn't want to see Trump impeached, removed from office, compared to 45% who do. Now, of course, there is a lot of numbers within that ley lines and stuff like that. 83% of those who said they want the president impeached identify as Democrats. Obviously, 95% who said they don't identify as Republicans. We have a very stiff divide in this country when it comes to impeachment. That's nothing new. Now, on this, as far as the ambassador Yovanovitch, which was probably one of the biggest star witnesses for the Democrats, at least they thought, just like all the other witnesses, they have no evidence of anything. They are there talking about what they think and what they feel and what they assume and what they suppose. That is not what that's not what any kind of hearings, or when you want to get to any kind of factual conclusion, that is not the right ingredients to put into that. So we'll listen to it's a brief 28 seconds here.
statement, I would now feel compelled to ask you, Madam Ambassador, as you sit here before us, very simply and directly, do you have any information regarding the President of the United States accepting any bribes?
No.
Do you have any information regarding any criminal activity that the President of the United States has been involved with at all?
No.
That statement.
So that was Yovanovitch just kind of blowing up the Democrat battleship all in one move. Well, two moves, I guess, if you want to say that. She didn't have any evidence for the bribery. She didn't have any evidence for any criminal misconduct or doings. And that right there should have just stopped everything, because we heard this over and over from a lot of the witnesses. They just don't have any evidence. There was a congressman that asked an entire panel of so-called witnesses who were basically witnesses to nothing. They asked them if they if they had any evidence to raise their hand. Of course, none of them raised their hand because they just don't have any, and they're not gonna raise their hand if they don't have any evidence. They're free to just say whatever they want to the media and say they have all this circumstantial or damning evidence. We kept hearing damning evidence, but when it was actually time for the hearings, we heard this all the way up to the hearings, but when it was actually time to actually hear any of the actual evidence, none of it actually showed up. Big surprise why people are tuning out, right, Miss Weiner from the New York Times? Not a big surprise why people are tuning out, why they have tuned out, why I have even tuned out, because it's a complete snooze fest, and I will not be watching any more of it. I'll watch the highlights if there's any more, which I don't think there is. They already put at the articles of impeachment. I will be watching the Senate trials because I think that will be the popcorn moment. It really just depends on what Republicans do with it, but that's not even what this is about. So this is an article. It was originally about Netanyahu indictment and the Trump impeachment process are both products of a democracy's failures. The last paragraph, I believe this is an opinion piece, but the partisan divide in America has at least partially fed into the murky impeachment efforts by the parties out of the White House since twice in the last 20 years. In Israel, the failure to form a viable coalition government and Netanyahu's failure to set up a viable successor has led to an ongoing political impasse on top of an indictment controversy. It's all just the latest evidence. The democratic governments, meaning Israel and the United States, are really defeated by foreign invaders. Rather, they usually end up destroying themselves. And that really brings me to this whole coup thing. If you watch Trump's Twitter, he's constantly using witch hunt. He's constantly using coup. But I believe that he's using it in the wrong way, because this whole thing, now you could make some arguments that how the House actually made their rules with this whole Judiciary Committee and this whole impeachment process was a form of a coup, because they just did it their own way. They just subverted how the Constitution was supposed to be. Now the Constitution doesn't really talk too much about the rules, but the House is supposed to do it the way they see fit. But I think they really just kind of took advantage of that clause and ran with it. Then now they'll end up getting away with it. They have gotten away with it. There will be no justice when it comes to that. But I believe the justice will be coming in the end eventually anyway. So moving on here, there's, like I was talking about, the small group of Democrats float censure instead of impeachment. Then this was actually just from 5 days ago. I believe Nancy Pelosi came out with the articles around that same time. But they really, I think a lot of these Democrats or at least the moderate ones at least, who are not under the complete mind control of the DNC and who I believe is their communist masters. They're starting to realize that this really isn't worth all of their time. This really isn't worth the time of the people. And it's not worth the division and all of the scars that will inevitably come from this whole process. And it's also going to set, like I said, a false precedent going forward where, if someone is in office, well, we'll just go ahead and just release a whole bunch of black propaganda and we will destroy him politically in impeachment or try to impeach him. And if we can't, he'll be ruined. He or she will be ruined either way. And that's the type of system that we're going towards, which is a type of banana republic instead of a republic where political opponents are just destroyed. Now, you can make the argument that Trump was trying to target Biden, and you might have a significant point there. But as far as there being any quid pro quo or criminal misdoings, that didn't happen. Was it inappropriate that he brought up Biden? Absolutely. It was 100% inappropriate. He should have never done that. Now, if Biden, or if it was someone else, if it was anyone other than Biden, his political opponent, please ask yourself, would we really be doing this? Would we be spending tens and 20s and 30s of millions of dollars, trying this, in committee and judiciary committee and filing articles of impeachment? Will we be doing this if it was anyone else other than Biden? We also have to ask ourselves this question: is Trump really scared of Biden? Biden is really old, wheezy man who can't freaking hold up his head half the time and answer a question coherently. Do you think Trump, who is pretty much still on his game, some call him crazy, but I think that's just the way he operates. But do you think Trump is really scared of Biden? I don't really think he's scared of Biden to the point where, that he would risk his own impeachment or being accused of treason because he was trying to subvert the Constitution and going after a political opponent. Some can say that he was thinking that, but we don't. Up until now, we haven't started going after people for thought crimes. But that is really starting to happen now. We're really starting to go after people for thought crimes. You can't think the wrong thing, or you're going to go down. So going forward here are the 12 representatives who are more than likely going to be voting no. Lucy McBath from Georgia, Jared Golden, Colin Peterson, Minnesota, said if anyone thinks the partisan impeachment process would constrain President Trump, they're fooling themselves. Without significant bipartisan support, impeachment proceedings will be the lengthy and divisive action with no resolution. Obviously. Jeff Andrew, who we just heard from New Jersey, doesn't want to go down the impeachment route. Representative Small from New Mexico. This is okay. Well, I think all these people just simply it's not that they love Trump, but they just don't love this whole process. They don't think it makes any sense. Representative Mac Rose from New York, Anthony Brindisi from New York, Kendra Horde from Oklahoma, Representative Joe Cunningham, South Carolina, Representative Bernice Johnson. Eddie Bernice Johnson from Texas, Representative McAdams, Utah, and Representative John Kine, Wisconsin. I think before we actually get to a vote, we're going to see more than this. I think we'll probably see at least 15 Democrats vote no to this. That's really kind of where I'm going. I think there's a lot of holdouts, and I think as far as laws of probability go, you're probably going to have at least a few more dropouts. So we'll end up with about 15 to 20. That's my prediction, at least. Moving forward. This was something about Obama, killing that Omar, I believe his the whole story about Obama and killing the Omar. I think Anwar. Yeah, it's Anwar Awlaki. Yes, that's his name. Sorry, I couldn't pronounce that. Anwar al-Awlaki, and of course his 16-year-old son. They were killed in a drone attack back in, I believe, 2000. I think it might have been 2009, 2010, maybe a little bit later. I can't remember exactly. It might have been 15. I can't remember. But this was just another example of some of the things that Obama did that was impeachable. But we're not really going to get into that, honestly. This is something about black propaganda, and I believe this is really happening in the United States, especially with the liberal media. If you repeat enough of this garbage over and over, people are going to start believing it. So this really leads into what I was really thinking about on this whole coup. There is a communist infiltration into this country, and it has been going on for decades. Ever since before the end of the Cold War. The communists have been wanting to infiltrate this country from within because they know they couldn't infiltrate it from the outside. There's no way, at least at that time, for the Russia to win a type of military war against the United States. We were just too well armed, and we were throwing too much money into our military at that time. Now we are a little bit weaker. Obviously, that is still kind of on the table, but I don't think it'll ever come to fruition unless there is some sort of world war where it drags all the major superpowers inside. I don't think that the superpowers are going to be going after each other directly, but I think they might be dragged in by smaller states warring with each other. That's always been really the plan at the get-go. And if you look at a lot of the liberal policies and the destabilization of not only Europe and the Middle East, you can see how a lot of this is going. It's all about destabilizing the countries, and they're trying to do this to create a world government, because if they have a world government, then those who are in the lead or in the top are able to control things even better, including the population. Of course, if there's no national identity, it's so much easier to control and infiltrate new propaganda into the mindset if that national identity is gone. And we see this happening. Back in the 40s, there was I think it was the 40s. You'll have to excuse me if I'm wrong. It was actually, in 1963, there was a book that came out called The Naked Communist. Now, the Naked Communist actually put forward 45 goals of the communists. Now, this wasn't just from the person that wrote this. This was actually part of a larger list of communist goals that predated that. When Skousen actually wrote The Naked Communist, he took the 45 goals and the ones that were probably the most important, and now we can kind of determine whether the communists have kind of reached a lot of their goals. And this is what I'm talking about. This is what the actual coup is. It's not a coup against the Donald Trump. It is a coup against the United States from within, from the communist infiltration into this country. Now, it's not so much from Russia itself, because it's just the influence of communism and Marxism in general. It was always supposed to be that way. Lenin and Stalin and all the communists knew that the only way to infiltrate the United States and destroy the United States is with infiltration from within. It's an ideological shift in a country that destroys it inevitably, especially the much larger and the stronger ones. That is how to destroy them. And this is just something that we have to really pay attention to, and we're going to be talking about. We're going to be going through a few of these things. We're not going to be going through them all, but we're going to be showing how this has actually shifted the ideological foundations of this country. So the first one that we'll be talking about here going forward is the U.S. acceptance of coexistence as the only alternative to atomic war. We see this with the Cold War and the so-called ending of the Cold War, that we have had to disarm, and we've had to sign peace treaties and nuclear treaties, and we've had to accept this coexistence with other superpowers. So that has already been completed. Two is the U.S. willingness to capitulate in preference to engaging in atomic war. We see capitulation, at least we saw that in a lot of Democratic presidencies, including Obama, where he capitulated almost on a daily basis. Obama and the liberals have been walking hand in hand with the Soviets and Russia and Putin for a long time, and they have just kind of subverted that, and it kind of pushed that out of the media. We're not talking about that as much or at all anymore. But going forward, number 3, develop the illusion that total disarmament by the United States would be a demonstration of moral strength. So this is a Communist Control Act. We're actually going to go back a little bit. So the Communist Control Act came out in 1954. The act has since been ruled unconstitutional in federal court, but has not been ruled on in Supreme Court and has never been enforced. So when we go back, that actually goes back to the, let me see. We'll actually kind of go back to that. This actually goes a little bit further down, but let's see. Okay, the loyalty. Okay, I guess we need to go forward a little bit, but we can actually see the total disarmament by the United States. We see this in a lot of different articles. A second, I pulled up a lot of articles. So, okay, here we go. So while we hear from the time, this was from back 2014, why we must disarm the U.S.'s unprecedented nuclear arsenal. So that has already been completed as well. Permit free trade. The number 4, permit free trade among all nations, regardless of communist affiliation, regardless of whether or not items could be used for war. We see this. We also see the case here for disarm America's police force. So we're actually talking about that as well. So not only a national disarmament, but a subnational or a community disarmament of the police is actually being heralded as a good idea as well. This is another article from Splinter. How to disarm America? We see this kind of this idea that Americans should be disarmed at all costs because we just simply can't trust ourselves with guns, and we should not be able to defend ourselves in any way. So that is another article on that. Let's see. So here on history.com, from November 1451, the United States gives military and economic aid to communist Yugoslavia. Now, this just goes forward over and over. We are constantly giving aid to communist countries and a lot of at least post-Soviet states, including Hungary, Poland, and all that kind of stuff. Of course, we give aid to all these other countries, which is fine. But this is just simply another example of how the United States have been continuously giving aid to communist countries. So when the liberals out there are saying stuff bad about we got to be worried about Russia, we really need to understand. I really wish they'd understand that even their own party really embraces a lot of the communist ideals, a lot of the Marxist and Leninist ideals, as well as embracing the actions of Antifa, which are purely communist. Antifa, as we all know, rose out of Germany prior to World War II against working against the Nazis. They were actually working against the so-called fascist Nazis, the National Socialists, but they were pro-communist all day long. So number 5 on the current communist goals: extension of long-term loads to Russian and Soviet satellites. We have seen this. A lot of the Soviet satellites are also part of the UN. At least they are now. So we know that. One second. Kind of have to clear this up. So this is a lot of the Soviet satellites. Has Poland, Hungary, Romania, Bulgaria. Of course, we see a lot of these. All of these countries are actually part of the UN. So that is another communist goal that has been completed. Number 6, provide American aid to all nations regardless of communist domination. We already went over that. We know that is already in place. We've been doing that for many years. 7, grant recognition of Red China admission of Red China to the UN. This has already happened. Let me see. So set up East and West Germany as separate states. That happened after World War II. That was already completed. Of course, thankfully that with the help, at least from President Reagan, that East and West Germany were reunited. Now, it wasn't just Reagan that did this. This is actually a very fascinating story about the corridor in Berlin that people were actually using to get to West Germany, and how that corridor was actually reopened, and that's what actually really helped to cause the Berlin Wall to fall. If you don't know that story, I would highly recommend looking into it. It's actually a gem of history that's not really taught in schools. Number 9, prolong the conference to a ban atomic test because the United States has agreed to suspend tests as long as negotiations are in process. We have already seen this. Number 10, allow all Soviet status individual representative UN. We just discussed that. Let me see. Promote. This is a big one. Promote the UN as the only hope for mankind. If its charter is rewritten, demand that it be set up as a one-world government with its own independent armed forces. We already see that. The UN already has its own armed forces. It is already seen as the only hope for mankind. That is why so many different types of summits are held, in part by the UN, as far as for climate change, against war and stuff like that. They're really pushing towards this world government. This has just been something that's been going on and on. It's not going to happen overnight. It never was intended to happen overnight. But the UN has always been part of that whole thing, to bring every nation together so we can all have this world government, one world currency, probably one world religion as well. We see a lot of the leaders of these different religions, from Islam, from Judaism, from Christianity, and the like, coming together and trying to just come up with a resolution on this whole thing. And I just really think that's kind of dangerous, because there are fundamental differences in different types of religions. We're not going to, this is something about religion, but there are truly fundamental differences between all these different types of religions. And if you do understand that, you understand that you can't just jam all together into one religion. And that's that is the antithesis to religion in general. So that is just something that we need to obviously keep an eye on. It's always, it's been in the news several times over the last few years. If you're paying attention, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Number 12 is resist any attempt of outlaw the Communist Party. We have seen this even with the Communist Control Act, which was voted as unconstitutional. We also see that with the I believe, let me see, the Communist Party USA. This has been going on since 1919. It has over 10,000 members. I don't even know how many members it has now, but it's I think it's actually really called the Democratic Party, Democratic Communist Party of the United States. I think it's referred to as the Communist Party of the United States, but it's still going on. It hasn't been disbanded or anything like that. But there's a lot of different communist groups that's actually going on in the United States. So it's tolerated. It's absolutely tolerated, and in a lot of ways it's encouraged. So going forward here, do away with all loyalty oaths, number 13. So we go here. This was from, I believe this is LA, Los Angeles Times. And editorial, and this was from, let me see, this was from October 4th, 2015. But you see this a lot, exposing the absurdity of loyalty oaths, where they just talk about how absurd it is, how they need to get rid of loyalty oaths, how the Pledge of Allegiance needs to go. We've all seen those stories, and it's frightening, because the way I look at it is that this country isn't trying to go and just try to take over other nation, impose its will on other. Some people can make that argument, but I would counter it that the United States has been really, really good at spreading freedom rather than subjugation around the world. And that's kind of where it ends, because if we have freedom-loving allies and allies who want to be free, we're going to help them become free and help them and run their own countries so they can be trading partners. I mean, that's just how the whole capitalism type of economy works. And at its heart, that's kind of what we're after. We're after, a win-win situation. That's not really what dictatorships are about. That's not what communist regimes are about. They're not about win-win situations. They're about win-lose situations. So let me see. This is also, that was also something from the Washington Post. Unfortunately, I don't have a subscription there. I just don't like it. Okay, so back to the communist goals here. Number 14, continue giving Russia access to the U.S. Patent Office. This is actually, this was from the John Marshall Review and Intellectual Property Law between Russia and the United States. This was the U.S. and Russian patent systems. And if we go down here to, let me see, the bilateral U.S.-Russian Presidential Commission Invasion Working Group report, it says here on page 508, in an effort to find ways to eliminate or at least to mitigate legislative obstacles and to provide legislative support and stimulus for innovation in both countries, meaning the U.S. and Russia Innovation Working Group of the Russia-U.S. Bilateral Presidential Commission prepared a report with suggestions on a number of legislative change in patent law. So this is just kind of leading into where the U.S. and Russia have always been working together when it comes to patent law. So that goal is success to that, completed. Number 15, capture one or both political parties in the United States. We can make a lot of arguments that over the last 8 years, minus Trump being president, I'm just saying that the entire Obama administration, the left has been working towards this communist goals here. There's been so many instances where the United States, under the direction of Obama, has looked the other way to a lot of Soviet crimes and Russia interference in other countries' politics. Like I said, mentioned before, the annexation of Crimea and the invasion of Georgia and all that stuff, and a lot of the hot mic moments between Russian representatives and President Obama. We all remember those. So it's been a long, ongoing, steady type of burn of communism that has been infiltrating into our very ideology and our foundation of this country. I know this is long, and I'm going to try to wrap this up here in a few minutes. So let me see. So get number 17, big one. Get control of the schools. Use them as transmission belts for socialism, current communist propaganda. So we go forward here. This was an article here, says why it's hard to take Democrats seriously on Russia. It was just going through all of the different types of things that the Obama administration did, directly looking the other way on Russia. This happened. Definitely look into that, research that a little bit more. Also here, socialism rising, universities and radical professionals helping steer leftward shifts in politics, critics say. So we see a lot of this from the universities. The university is actually pushing this Leninist, Marxist type of communism as the antidote to capitalism. We've seen the memes, we've seen the lectures, we've seen the liberal professors go off and go crazy when people mention capitalism. It's like it's almost like they have this type of switch inside of their brain that just, if someone mentions capitalism or conservatism or anything that's fundamental to the Constitution Republic, it just triggers them. They go crazy. It's almost like they have been brainwashed, and that's kind of what we say when someone's triggered. That is something that it happens when you are brainwashed, and you are brainwashed into doing something that you wouldn't normally do, a rational person wouldn't normally do. So when certain words become triggers for you, you turn into a complete maniac, and that's basically what is the whole goal is. And you fervently want to defend this socialism communist agenda. And that's where we're at today in 2019. CNN thinks that socialism is cool. My grandparents from USSR would disagree. Of course, in Stalinist Russia, the people in the gulags were a regular occurrence. The socialist regime did not care about its people. The people were simply pawns to the socialism. They were worse than scum. The people owed their life to the state, and the state was their god. Religion was an afterthought. It wasn't anything that was part of society. And so that is also part of the communist goal. So gain control of all student newspapers, gain control of the schools. You also use student riots to form public protest against programs or organizations which are under communist attack. So we see this every time a conservative goes on stage. You will have students riot. You will have public protest against anyone with ideas that are against the idea of communism and socialism. When those ideas are put forward, or when alternative points of view from those things which are demeaning to the communist or socialist ideal, then you will see a lot of people get triggered. You will see the students get triggered. You'll see the faculty and administration that get triggered, and the school itself get triggered over all this stuff. This is something we see all the time in the news. So let me see. Moving forward here. Okay, so infiltrate the press. We already went over that. The press really thinks that socialism is cool. They're really pushing this communist agenda, and they're trying to kind of pretty it up and call it democratic socialism, because that's kind of what they call it over in Sweden, I guess, right, and all those other Nordic countries. But it simply would not work here. This is how communism takes its foothold. And like I said, that previous videos, that Sweden and all the other Nordic countries, they tried socialism, but it failed. They had to have capitalism come in and save them, but then they wanted to keep a lot of their social safety nets. So if you want to say that we are like them, yes, we are like them right now. We don't need to go down the pure socialist road, because it will not work. It simply will not work, because it's actually not the back door, but the front door into communism. Okay, so infiltrate the press, we already went over that. Gain control of key positions, radio, TV, motion pictures. I believe that we see that as well. 22, continue discrediting American culture by degrading all forms of artistic expression. Why is today's art so meaningless? I mean, if you've ever been to an art museum, at least one that most of them now are into the whole surreal experience and interactive kind of stuff. It's not real art. It's not really any art anymore. It's just cheap entertainment. When it comes to entertainment, what I'm referring to is asking yourself the question: is this really art? Is just something that should be laughed at, or is this something that should be serious? Or is the fact that I'm asking these questions, is that really the art itself? I mean, there's no real meaning behind it, and there's no way to really discern what the art is. That's why it's meaningless. That's why it's art, right? So anything can be really art in 2019, and going forward, it's going to get worse. Anybody that's seen the art from this day, this day of age, knows exactly what I'm talking about. So, 24, eliminate all laws governing obscenity by calling them censorship and violation of freedom of speech. This is a big one. We see that here just recently, Bang Bros. I thought it was the porn site Bang Bros. I had to actually look it up. I didn't know what it was. Honestly, I didn't. I don't watch this stuff, but they have recently put in a bid to actually put their name on the Miami Stadium. I don't know if that's gone anywhere, but I thought it was like something out of The Onion, but apparently that's real. So this whole, the Pornhub, the Bang Bros, I guess, and all that other kind of stuff, the obscenity, the little girls and boys twerking and the transvestite story hour and all that kind of stuff. Our morality is degrading in the United States. It really is, and it just continues to be degraded. So that we see this. That's about the art there. We see America's accelerating decay of morality. Here from the Guardian here, we see, well, actually that's a little bit further here. Let's keep going on since we're on a kind of roll here. So we were at the control art critics and art museums. That was just part of the artistic expression, making sure that everything is meaningless, awkward and meaningless forms. That is one of the communist goals. Successful. 24, eliminate all laws governing obscenity. That's successful. 25, breaking down cultural standards of morality, promoting pornography and obscenity in books, magazines. That's 100%. We already have that. Successful. 26, present homosexual degeneracy and promiscuity as normal, natural, healthy. Successful. 27, infiltrate the churches, replace revealed religion with social religion. Successful. We see here from Obama's remarks, just this was from back in 2008, but it's something that has stuck in a lot of voters' minds and a lot of people in the United States, because it really made them upset when Obama said that people were just clutching onto their Bibles. When Obama actually went and made fun of passages in the Bible that they wouldn't stand up to today's legal standards and all that kind of stuff. Of course they would. We're living in a different age and stuff like that. But when it comes to the laws of the land, when it comes to morality of the land, then there is just really there's no line to be drawn anymore. We just step over whatever meaningless line there is because there really isn't any line. So, and also the churches, infiltrate the churches. I mean, look at all the promiscuity in the churches. Look at what's his name, Osteen, who just talks about the prosperity gospel. It's not about the gospel, right? It's just about the prosperity gospel, about getting all the money, right? Mission accomplished, communists. This is where we're at right now. Eliminate prayer or any phrases of religious expression in schools. Mission accomplished, communist. 29. Discredit the American Constitution by calling it inadequate. That is mission accomplished. Here we look at the week here. This was from, let me see, January 26, 2018. They keep talking about it. The American Constitution is terrible. Let's throw it out and let's start over. Okay, so mission accomplished. We hear about that all of the time, where the left wants to get rid of the Constitution. So is the left really looking like communists, or is the liberal and the propaganda, the liberal machine that's moving forward right now, are they working for the freedom-loving Americans, or are they working for the communist regime and the communist ideology that's trying to take over this country? You tell me what makes more sense. 30, discredit the American founding fathers, present them as selfish aristocrats who had no concern for the common man. We see that constantly, where these liberal and the liberal media and also the those in academia are completely burying the real history of the American founding fathers and what they truly had in mind for this country. And they had discredited them by calling them nothing but racist. Does this sound familiar? 31, belittle all forms of American culture and discourage the teaching of American history, all on the grounds that it's only a minor part of a big picture. Give more emphasis to Russian history since the communists took over. Moving forward here, as an example, let me see, going forward, we see here from the Orange County, well, hold on, I thought I was going to actually be able to see this article. Okay, so the Orange County Register, this was from 2017. School curriculum whitewashes communism's history. Excuse me. This is just really you can see this news all the time in academia and even in a lot of the elementary and high schools as well. They are whitewashing communism. They are making communism cool again through the back door of socialism. Because if you know anything about communism, communism is Marxist or Leninist socialism. I wish more people would really learn about who Karl Marx was and what kind of a loser he was, and what kind of a lazy, no good loser that Karl Marx was. Maybe they know that Karl Marx was a complete loser, and maybe that's why they follow him. I don't know, but they are making Karl Marx and communism and socialism and all that jazz really really popular now. Going forward, or why schools have stopped teaching American history. Why do you think so many? Every time you see one of those channels that they go out there and they talk to people and they ask them questions about American history, why do you think so many people don't know the answer to typical American history? Like, I would probably say 5th grade type of questions. They don't know the answers because they didn't get any schooling in this. We are completely just taking out American history from the schools. We are making people dumber and dumber when it comes to American history and the Constitution, Republic, and our founding fathers, and we're getting them smarter and smarter on socialist, Marxist idealism and communism. This should be scaring the hell out of every single one of you. That's why I want to take so long on this, because this is a coup. This is a coup against the United States. This is not just a coup against the Trump administration. This is a coup against all of us. This has been going on for decades and decades. And if we allow more Democrats in office, they are completely on board with this. They are already brainwashed into forcing this communist idealism down everyone's throat. I just really want you to really think about that. And, you know, I rarely ever get really, really uptight or just wound up over something as I do with this whole communist infiltration in this country. Because I've been watching it for years. I've been watching it. It's not so much as something that is in the news. It is actually that's the underlying riptide that is happening in this country, and it's not so much left versus right. It is freedom versus communism. It is red versus blue, in all sense of the word. And the red is the communists, and the blue is those for freedom. And we really have to see this for what it is. Going back to the list. Okay, 32. Supporting the socialist movement to give centralized control over any part of the culture, education, social agencies, welfare programs, mental health clinics. We've seen this over and over. Those who have this socialist, communist ideologies are taking over a lot of our education, our social agencies, and our welfare programs. Excuse me. Moving forward, because we're running out of time, I want to keep this to about an hour. Eliminate all laws, procedures which interfere with the operation of communist apparatus. We'll skip that one. Eliminate the House Committee of Un-American Activities. This was done. House of Un-American Activities. House was abolished in 1975. Mission accomplished. Discredit and eventually dismantle the FBI. Look at where the FBI is now. You think all this was by mistake? The FBI, no one trusts the FBI anymore, do they? Think about it. 36, infiltrate and control more of the unions. We see this. Infiltrating control of big businesses. A lot of these big businesses, including Microsoft and Elon Musk, they are totally in favor of this socialist regime that they want to unveil. Especially if they were able to, for some reason, get Trump out of office, or if a Democrat actually wins, God forbid, Bernie Sanders. 38, transfer some of the powers of arrest from the police to social agencies, treat all behavioral problems as psychiatric disorders, with no one but psychiatrists can answer that. You've seen this. There is a huge book of psychiatric disorders that no one can understand other than psychiatrists. That is why all this ADHD and all this other defiance disorder. Guess what? If you are defiant against your state masters, guess what? You have defiance disorder, and you will be treated as a mental case. This is what they used to do in communist Russia, and we are seeing that here in the United States. We are seeing the beginnings and the middles of that. Sometimes on a lot of these, the ends as well. They're all coming to a conclusion. 39, dominate the psychiatric profession, and that's just goes along with 38. 40, discredit the family as an institution, encourage promiscuity and ease of divorce. Guess what? That is everywhere now. The destruction of the family has already occurred. There are so many single moms out there who can't raise their kids because the father's not there. Either the father's not there, or he's in prison. We have Ashley Madison, which AshleyMadison.com, which promotes promiscuity as its foundation of its entire business model. They have drive-through divorces now. It's so easy to get a divorce. There's no such thing as a nuclear family anymore. And why do you think all these foundations of a strong country, such as the family, such as religion, all of these things are being attacked, and they are all being driven down, and that is what's destroying this country from within. Number 41, emphasize the need to raise children away from negative influence of parents that believe that marijuana might be good for you, or they believe the state shouldn't be controlling your life. Attribute prejudices, mental blocks, and retarding of children to suppress influence of parents. We see this. MSNBC here recently, not too long ago, back in 2013. So I guess you can say a while ago. But this is a common talking point. It says your children do not belong to you; they belong to the state. Excuse me, I got a cold. But this is something that is just happening over and over. Your children don't belong to you. Your children belong to the state, and this is common theme right now that's going forward. I know we're over now, so we're going to cut it here in a little bit, few minutes. Here, 42, create the impression that violence and insurrection are legitimate aspects of the American tradition, that students and special interest groups, Antifa, should rise up and use united force to solve economic, political, and social problems. 42 is Antifa. 42 is all of the political unrest on campuses whenever someone wants to say something that might be against the groupthink and the Borg think of the communist-led progressive left. This should be frightening the hell out of you. Liberals cheer as anti-violence escalates. This was from this year. This is from Andy No, who got his ass handed to him. Unfortunately, got egged and got his head broke open, and I think he had a concussion as well. It's terrible. Wake up, people. This is not just hatred for Trump. This is the communist infiltration of this country. Internationalize the Panama Canal. That has not happened yet, right? Panama owns the Panama Canal ever since 1999. Repeal the Connolly Reservation in the United States cannot prevent the World Court from seizing jurisdiction over domestic problems. Now, this happened in I believe the 20s or 30s when Senator Connolly was in office. But to aid the International Connolly Amendment repealed. This was in 1961, so that was an easy one. Mission accomplished, right? So we see 45 goals of the communist state infiltration of this country, current communist goals. These are not just things that just some guy just came up with. These are the communist goals of infiltrating a country. You need to research this. This is something that's important. If you want to know what's going on in the news, if you want to know what the liberals are really after, if you want to know why they're so crazy, this is why. They are supporting the communist ideological shift in this country. And I'm sorry to say that it's working. And it's going to continue going on the longer and longer we do this. The longer and longer we say, okay, well, I'll go ahead and I'll lean towards this way. I'll look the other way when it comes to this. And the more people look in the other direction, the more the magician's going to keep pulling rabbits out of his hat. Until we are a room filled with red rabbits. Okay, I know that sounds silly, but every one of these goals that they keep pulling their heads out, it's just another rat. Another, and I would say rat, not rabbit. It's another rat he's pulling out of his hat. And those rats are promiscuous themselves. They get with each other and they have other baby rats, and those other rats keep growing, and then before you know it, you're infested. And I believe we're already at that point where you're infested. That's why Trump wants to drain the swamp. He knows exactly what he's talking about. He's not talking about just corruption. He's talking about communist. And everyone, for some reason, every time you say the word communist, it is what it is. Those on the left probably giggle with glee when you say communist because they love the idea, right? Now, I believe there's some Democrats over on the other side that are seeing what's happening, and they're starting to feel the tremors and the earthquakes that are happening because this has been going on for the last 50, 60, 70 years of this communist infiltration in this country. It's been very slow, but it's been very, very efficient. So I'm going to put this link. Actually, you know what? Just look up the 45 goals, the 45 communist goals. In fact, read The Naked Communist by Cleon Skousen. Okay, this is going to open your eyes to a lot of different stuff. Research this stuff and understand what's going on in your world before it's too late. Until next time, this is Joe with Simple Life Show, and I'll see you in the next one. Have a great day. Bye.